Good afternoon, everyone. So I hope that all of you can hear me. So good afternoon, my name is Mackenzie, for anyone who has not met me yet. So I am a program officer for the Community Engagement and Education in the Highlands under the WWF Malaysia flag. So today we have brought in actually 4 interesting characters to present 4 interesting topics, but we actually lost one speaker, I think due to the network problem that is engulfing Kedah as well. So, so yes, I guess it happens everywhere. But yes, on the bigger picture, we would like to show out the reality of climate change for Highlands communities in Sarawak. So it is an increasing awareness that needs to be shared. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Ms. Cynthia Chen, a senior project manager planning actually for WWF Malaysia. She has been working on nature conservation for more than 20 years, covering topics of biodiversity research, indigenous hunting patterns, and protected area management. So please welcome Ms. Cynthia, who will present climate and community collaboration in the Highlands of Sarawak. Ms. Cynthia.
Thanks very much. Hello, good afternoon. Matt, you'll be sharing the screen for me, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for still being here with us. I hope we don't get any hiccups from here onwards. Right, I'm just waiting for the screen to come on. So I'm here this afternoon merely to set the stage for the next few speakers who really are the ones working on the ground. So the next 10 minutes or so, it's really a bird's eye view of WWF's current collaborations in the Highlands. So can we go to the next slide, please? Right. So, no, previous one, sorry, next one, yeah. So climate change is a really big topic, especially today at the international level, as we all know. But what I really like to do is to draw attention a little closer to home, to look at whether Sarawak's highland communities, whether that's affecting them and how they're coping. And honestly, there's not been a lot of analysis on climate vulnerability in the area, but I like to start by just sort of putting a magnifying glass on it closer to home. Next, right. Let's begin first from the same place. Well, when I mention climate change, I basically refer to changes in the average being the key word, weather conditions in an area or region over a long period of time. So for today, I'm actually referring to Sarawak's Highlands, Barrio Bacalala, Non Semado, and other areas around there. So it's perhaps not accurate to say that a sudden change in weather over suddenly in one place or at one, in one period of time is climate change. It's perhaps not fair to say that. But what we can say is that climate change can manifest in certain symptoms, like prolonged rising sea levels, melting ice caps, extreme heat in some places, extreme cold in others, extreme rains that cause terrible floods, changes in flowering and fruiting seasons over an extended period of time. And perhaps the most relevant of that list of examples for us here in Sarawak is the last 2 one, which is the extreme, the floods and changing of flowering and fruiting seasons. Excuse me, next. So at the national, regional, and international level, we're seeing that the Malaysian government, as well as governments are from Southeast Asia, in Asia especially, they're taking a serious look at what's happening. And yes, Malaysia might be part of a lot of these international climate summits, like the one that's happening in Glasgow right now as we speak. And we are party to things like the United Nations framework on climate change, the Kyoto Protocol, and so forth. That seems all very, very far away when we're here in Sarawak. So, but now more and more, we're seeing live examples very much at our doorstep. So this data is from Sungai Terusan. Matt, can you go to the next slide and then you go back to this slide again? So we're talking about Sungai Terusan here in Sarawak. Okay, can you go back to the previous slide? Thanks. If you're looking at the far left columns, it's it's data from NAHRIM, the National Institute for Water Research. And we're looking at rainfall from the 1970s, pretty much up till 2011. And we're seeing like an increase, right? So that's past data. And if you look at the average temperatures and all this, there are slight changes. And remember I said that when with climate change, an average change could mean an extreme somewhere and an extreme increase somewhere and an extreme decrease somewhere else. So we're talking averages. And there has been changes since the 70s that's not just a short period of time. So we are looking at data that's changing. And what NAHRIM has done is they've taken the data from before and they've done the modeling and they've modeled, projected towards the 2100s. Now, I would caution about looking into the future. This is not prophecy. This is just modeling. But I would say that the previous historical data is something that we can definitely look at. And for the Trusan area, it seems to indicate that there is a trend towards an increase in rainfall. Okay, that's all that we can say from here. We can't conclusively say, right, there's climate change, but we can say that there's a trend in the average climate and weather change. So in this year alone, we're looking at pictures from this year, from May, end of October, beginning October. There's been some really, really bad floods up in Longsamado. And I understand that floods do occur from time to time, but I'm also given to understand that this year's flood has been one of the worst in a long time in conversations with the local people there. So these photos show some of the damages to bridges. That bridge has basically been damaged, needs to be repaired. People's paddy fields and riverbanks have been destroyed. So I'd like to pose the question here, how much becomes too much when we're talking about livelihoods and the way that weather patterns are changing? The impact to Highland communities are immense, they're costly. There's personal loss, there's loss of livelihoods, there's loss of access like the bridge. What are the financial costs that we're talking about? And what are the non-financial costs? One of the things that WWF works on is eroded riverbanks in Longsamado. And these are already eroded. So we're looking at repairs that are using sustainable materials to repair something, to repair nature that's already been broken. It's costing us at least 250,000 ringgit so far and counting. So, in many ways, it's probably cheaper to prevent than to remedy, right? There are these are some of the questions that we at WWF started to ask ourselves, right? It is a known fact that forests that are alive, living forests, are crucial for mitigating climate change, because the key to mitigating climate change is to reduce greenhouse gases, among other things. And we know that live forests keep more carbon than they give out, right? So one tropical tree, if you look at the slide, could remove up to 50 kilos of carbon dioxide per year. And that's one tree. You count the trees in the forest that surrounds Barrio and Longsamado and Bacalalan. On average, we're talking, this is a very low average. We say 20 to 50 years of removing 50 kilos of carbon dioxide per year. And it depends on the lifespan of the tree. And you imagine what a full forest could do with that. And you can compare the information from live versus chopped down forests. This information is from the World Resources Institute and an organization called COFORT. So you can see that the live forest actually is far more valuable life when we're talking about climate change, okay? Okay, so for the next few slides, I'm gonna look into what WWF's doing in the Highlands. So our mandate is to stop environmental degradation and to establish conditions where humans live in harmony with nature. So the whole thing about wildlife, natural environment is very much one side of the story, because we subscribe to the fact that we need to have people's well-being concerned as well. So as far as WWF in Sarawak is concerned, the Highlands and the remote hinterland of Sarawak, most of us know that as the heart of Borneo, are really the last frontiers of defense. when it comes to climate change, when we talk about the Sarawak context and the Borneo context, right? And these are frontiers that involves local communities who derive their culture, their history, their livelihood from these forests. So these are some publications that I just drew out, just from Southeast Asia and Asia. It's a known fact that the key to successful environmental stewardship and management lie very much with involvement with local communities. So these are publications who confirm that from various authorities and researchers. So we very much subscribe to that. And this is why we put a lot of emphasis in partnerships. So we've been partnering up with the Highland communities through platforms such as Formadat, which is the Forum for Forum Masyarakat Adat Dataran Tinggi, and also with Pade, which is a relatively new community platform for the Banan communities. It stands for People's Association for the Development and Education of Penans in Sarawak. So we've been partnering with these communities for well over 10 years. With Formadat, we started in the mid-1990s, very much involving WWF Indonesia as well as Malaysia. And with the Banan communities in an area called Kuban Puak, which is in Ulu Tuto, we initiated the work first in 2011. And we subscribe very much to the fact that when we're working with local communities, and when I say working with, I'm really meaning collaborating and full partnership. We know that it's a long-term commitment. So we started in 2011 with in Kuban Puak. And these projects has evolved and grown and from phase to phase, and it's in its current iteration. Currently, we are carrying out a project funded by the German Federal Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development. And the huge aim is to achieve a manner of sustainable forest management that involves co-management with local communities, but also to look at income generation as an additionality from natural resources. And we've got two project sites, basically. One is in Kubampua and Ulu Tuto, and the other is in the Highlands, basically focusing in Long Semado and Bacalalan. Now, my colleagues are going to go into the details, and I hope a colleague from Kedah is able to sign in. But well, in fact, I think I'm very honored to see that some of the Pade representatives are here as well today, and they will be presenting later as well. But this slide's basically a sweeping summary of some of the activities that we have started to do, got interrupted by the pandemic because of the travel restrictions and everything. And we're about to start again now that the restrictions have eased down a bit. So we are looking at community gardens, restoration of rattan in the natural areas, because people do depend on rattan for all sorts of things. We're also looking at empowering the local artisans to partner up with corporate, what do you call those businesses, responsible businesses on their handicraft, marketing and branding. We are looking at in situ fish conservation, otherwise known as tagang. We are looking at sustainable infrastructure, exploring, well, we have to do feasibility studies, exploring things on sanitation, sustainable electrical supply, that sort of thing. And one of the things that we've started quite actively is the riverbank restoration in Long Semado, and also the sustainable rice farming in Bacalaran. Okay. So that's just a really, really short summary of it. But, you know, really in WWF, we don't believe in carrying out projects under our own steam, because, you know, those of you who know my background, and I see a few people that I know, you know that I'm a wildlife person. I started life out as a wildlife researcher. At our core, WWF started off as a wildlife and forest bunch of people. So now that we've expanded into looking at human well-being, and as well as acknowledging the need to conserve for people, we need partners so we can form alliances to tackle large issues like climate change and a lot of other things. And really for this area that we're talking about today, what better partners to have than the local communities whose lives, whose history depend on perpetuating living, breathing forests, really. And that give them a platform of resilience. And at the end of the day, it really does help the world, you know, beyond what it does for the people itself. So with that, I'd like to thank you. I hope I haven't taken up too much time. Thanks very much, and welcome any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Cynthia, for that interesting sharing. I think we have something in the chat. Just see what are the questions they pose. Oh yeah, I think we have one from Dr. John Pua. What is or are the major causes of climate change in the Highlands? Is it possible to regulate deforestation?
Okay, that's like the $1 million question of what causes climate change in the Highlands. There isn't any hard and fast data on what is causing it. But what we do know in general is that when we have less and less forest, and we have more and more carbon dioxide through various reasons, whether it's deforestation, whether it's an increase in development, all of that comes into play. And where Borneo is concerned, if you look at the entire world, we are along the equatorial belt. And we're at a global level, when things are happening too fast for the trees and the forest to replenish the oxygen back into the atmosphere, that's where it gets a bit hairy. I think that with a lot of factors, I can't give you an exact factors to it, but I think that definitely deforestation is one of them, okay, amongst many. If you look at the map of Borneo and the forest cover of Borneo since the 1970s, we've lost quite a fair bit of our primary forest, and that might be one of the issues. And it might be clearing of oil palm from all around Borneo. It might be that. But we recognize that some of this is development that's needed for economic returns. But what we're saying is that there needs to be some kind of sustainable management that includes local communities. So because they are the co-managers of the area. Is it possible to regulate deforestation? I think that currently the Sarawak government is imposing mandatory certification processes for timber companies. I think that the government also targets for a certain amount of protected areas, community areas, permanent forest reserves all around Sarawak. So there is laws and policies in place under the Ministry of Environment and implemented by the Forest Department. So there is that for Sarawak. I think Sarawak's one of the few places that have actually very good laws about that. Yeah. So there's a question here that says from Dr. Roger, do WWF programs target the prevention of biodiversity loss? Generally speaking, yes. However, with the what we do is we have priority conservation areas. That's how we plan. With the limited resources that we have, we need to identify the biggest threats. So what are the species that are keystone species, umbrella species, and we identify those. And when you address the threats, for example, one of Sarawak's umbrella species is the orangutan. Another one is the clouded leopard. When you target working on conservation of these species, you are basically, they represent like an umbrella for the rest of species that are within their habitat. So we do work on things like that, and very much partner up with local authorities like the Forest Department and Sarawak Forestry Corporation. Yeah. Over to you, Mac.
All right, thank you, Ms. Cynthia. Thank you for that, those answers. I hope those answers can answer the questions that we posed. I guess if there is no other questions, we would like to move on to our next speaker. Mr. Alfred Balang Sibal is the village head of Long Telingan in Long Semado, as well as the chairman of the Community Representative Committee. So Mr. Alfred himself being heavily involved in the riverbank restoration project, will talk about this important bit next. So over to you, Mr. Alfred.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Mackenzie. We're talking about Long Smado. Okay. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Long Smado area is made up of 12 clusters of villages, including residential area for those working in the primary school, that is SK Long Smado. The population is about 1,000 people, and they mainly with paddy farmers. Paddy farmers, the farmers upstream are losing their land to riverbank erosion. Protection from further erosion and restoration of riverbanks in Long Smado through planting trees and bamboos along the riverbanks and implementation of bioengineering measures at affected riverbanks in Long Smado. Okay. Between 2017 and 2018, a study was carried out by hydrologists from the University of Nottingham, Malaysia campus, and a series of consultations with communities were held. It was decided that remedial work using bioengineering methods to be carried out along a stretch of Upper Trusan River that's about 5.2 kilometers, marked in red boundary, involving communities from Punang Trusan and Long Telingan. The bioengineering methods to restore the riverbanks are completely new to WWF Malaysia and communities affected. Potentially a first in Sarawak, the project uses bamboo live fencing, brush wall, and biodegradable coconut coir Geotech Style made instead of the conventional hard engineering approaches. Next. Okay, the restoration sites in Punang Trusan. Okay, you can see from the map there. The first site, Site A, belongs to John Ating. This is the farmland. Site B is Brother Labo Ating, and Site C, Proyek Bangau. The methods used there was brush wall, live fencing, Geotech Style logs. And Site B also live fencing, Geotech Style. Site C also brush wall, live fencing, Geotech Style logs. And Site D, live fencing, plant riparian buffer. Okay. And the restoration site at Long Telingan, Site E1 belonging to Balang Dawat, the method used was regrade banks, Geotech Style protection with seeds planting. Site E, opposite the other side of the riverbank, belongs to Baru Dawat, and those use brass mattresses. And lower down, Site F, belonging to James Yama Padan, the method used was line fencing, about 10 meters wide, and riparian buffer planting. eroded sites before the intervention. Those are the photos of eroded riverbank along Trusan River at Trusan and Long Slingan, taken in the early 2018. The bridge left is at risk of collapse, while farmers continue to lose their paddy field right if these sites are not addressed. And actually, on the night of 30th September 2021, the other end of the bridge actually collapsed due to erosion on the bank. And picture shows
Yes. Let me just play the video for this. Yeah.
Yep. That is how devastating the flood was. Okay. Opposite there, that's the Geotech Style. That was installed in Long Slingan in October 2019. And on the right hand side is the bioengineering methods to restore eroded riverbanks. The Geotech Style method is used on the left side of the riverbank and brush wall on the right side. And next. And monitoring is done regularly on sites that have been mitigated with villagers' assistance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fred. Thank you for having the time to join us for today's sharing. I guess before we move on to the next speaker, I think do we have any questions for Mr. Alfred? If so, no, I don't think we have any questions. But again, thank you for sharing what is happening in the past and of course currently in Long Slingan. Thank you again, Mr. Alfred.
Welcome.
Right, I guess finally our last speaker, like to introduce Mr. Franklin George. I think probably most of the partners here know him already, a Banan native. He currently is the project coordinator of People's Association for Development and Education of Banan Sarawak, which is Pade, and working together with the Banan communities in the Kebun Puak to help improve their livelihood and also to empower them in sustainable forest management. So the first is yours, Mr. Franklin.
Thank you, Mick.
Right, let me just share your screen. Yeah.
Yeah. Hope everyone still have energy to listen for the last presentation. Okay, I will present for Pade. I will talk about sustainable livelihood for Banan toward a climate resilient community under the theme of reality of climate change for community in Sarawak. The agenda, yeah. Next. Yeah. Banan people. Banan nomadic indigenous people living in Sarawak. It's if we see in the maps, it's on the upper part, which is Baram area and Bintulu. Banan can be divided into two main groups, which is Western Banan and Eastern Banan. In Baram area, it's mostly Eastern Banan, and in Bintulu area, it's mostly Western Banan. And if we see in the maps, there is a Kubaan Puak where we working with WWF for our project started last year. And Banan are one of the last such people remain as a hunter-gatherer. We know that Banan are very close to the forest, like what we see in the photos there. It's sago. It's previously a main source of Banan food. For us in town, we depend to whatever it is, like a bank, supermarket, to get our food. But for Banan, forest is the clinic where they get their medicine, and also forest is where they get their food. Means forest is their supermarket, and also forest is the source of food for the Banan. So we really depend and want to protect the forest for our next generation. So the younger generation like us, we cultivate rice, like the community in Samado or Highland area, and also like what I said before, we depend on the forest to get the fruit, but now we do farming also. And the population of Banan in Sarawak is around 20,000 in last 2 years. This is the statistic from President Office in Mary. Yeah. So we talk about climate change earlier. Cynthia have present about the climate change, and we know that it's become worse right now, and the source of the climate change is based on this one is carbon dioxide, where we produce it every time here, especially in the city, and also other sources is like steel making, cement production, and also forest loss, where we want to highlight it here. And next, yeah, reality of climate change among Banan community. Here we can see many photos of Banan do blockade, and Banan are very famous for the blockade against the company who do the illegal logging. Because like what I said just now, Banan are very depend on the forest, and we don't want people to, or company to just cut the trees, and because it will give damage and disasters for us. Previously, I working with ICT. We do a study on climate change in the middle there, we do a study. If you ask Banan if they know about climate change, they will say they don't know climate change. But if you ask them if there is any changing in the how they do farming or the rivers in the area, then they will answer you. So the climate change is affect their life. And on the bottom right, we can see the Long Lama town. It's flooded in May this year. And also during our trip to our site, Kuban Park, we will go through that bridge on the middle below. Ezra, our director for Pade, have taken the photo of the bridge, but sadly the bridge collapsed after like 1 or 2 weeks after our trip to the Kuban Park. Next. Here is a short clip taken by the community of Long Kawa. So here is what happened if we don't take care of our forest, if we don't take care of our world. And just last week, we have a visit to our site, and the right photos is the remaining bridge that we cannot pass anymore. Next. Yeah, the world approach toward climate change, like what Cynthia said just now, we should work together to tackle the climate change because it will be worse, and organization or countries should work together with the policymaker to tackle the climate change. For example, we can see in Sarawak, our government are doing very good job in doing something like renewable energy. In my village, we very lucky we can see the light using through the SARES program. And now in Baram area in Sarawak, we can see that there is many solar panel and that can give electric to village, to the kampong in the remote area. Yeah, next. So Banan approach toward climate change. Actually, Banan have a culture that we call molong. Molongs mean never taking more than what we need, never taking more than necessary. For example, if we go to take a sago, so we only take the one that are very good enough and mature enough to take. The others we will leave it for the future. And also like animal, if we go to hunting, we only hunt the one that are big enough, and the small one we will leave it or take it back to the kampong where we stay and take care of it after it big enough, then we will release it. That is how Molongs, because we believe that if we take care of the forest, for example, then we will get something good out of it later on. And that's about Molong. We should Penan should practice this one and pass it to the younger generation, because it's very good practice. Next. Yeah. Just now I said that I represent Pade. Pade is an acronym for People Association for Development and Education of Penang Sarawak. It's very long name like ISITI-UNIMAS. Before we have involved in education only since 2011, and since in 2019 we have collaborated with WWF, World Wildlife Fund, for Bengal project that we do right now. We are very lucky to have WWF as our partner. The community project that we working with is subsistence farming, restoring degraded agriculture area, and also fish conservation. It's very good project for the community. And next. Yeah, here is some of the activities that we did. We can see on the top left, our director playing with fish, the tagang in Sabah. And also we have a discussion with DOA, inland fisheries in Maldives. They are doing tagang in some part of Baram. And also we start to deliver fish feed for the community in our site. This one we want to do conservation of river and fish in our area. Next. Yeah. Another activity is about rotan, because like what Ms. Cynthia said just now, the community are very depend on rotan, especially Penan, for their handicraft. They can make basket, mat, and many more from the rotan. And right now, rotan is very become hard to get in the area. So we we collaborate with the community to supply, to deliver rotan. We collaborate with Kabulok agricultural station, and last week we delivered like 2,000 rotan to two village in the Kuban Tuak. We use lorry and boat because the bridge have gone, and we only use boat to deliver the rotan. I think that's all. Jen Green and terima kasih. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Franklin, for that extremely interesting sharing. It's definitely an eye-opener. Let me just check if we have any questions or feedback for our speaker here. Do we have any? Oh, no. Then I guess they understood, or they really understand your explanation. Thank you again, Mr. Franklin, for joining us today and filling up today's session with these wonderful facts as well. So with that, I would like to express our absolute gratitude and thanks to all our speakers for indulging us with this wonderful sharing. And thank you again to UNIMAS for such a wonderful hybrid event. Despite the limitations due to this current situation we are in together. Again, if I can bring in our motto here, together possible. So you have managed to pull this. So thank you. And so again, I'll pass this off to Professor Nara. Over to you, Prof. Nara.
Thank you very much, Mackenzie. Very enriching session. Well, I have to once again say my thank you to Dr. Jason. I think I see your name there, right? Thank you to WWF for being our partner once more again. Well, this year, I mean, we don't kind of feel each other's presence. I mean, despite the virtual links, I think as much as we did before when we drove all the way to Longtelingan, and it was really fun the last time. I mean, the WWF team and UNIMAS team. Well, we really look forward to reaching out to many more sites, including Kuban, Puak, and all. I think, well, since we have an alignment in kind of motives and intentions to reach out to community, to preserve the environment, and also to look for ways where the community's work is balanced enough to preserve the life and the systems for a better, I mean, sustainable life for all of us, right? So with that, thank you again, Mackenzie. Thank you to all the speakers. Nice to listen to you, Franklin. Missing you already.
Still here.
Right. Okay.
Thank you too, Prof.
Yeah, right. So with that, just like to say that that comes to the end of all the formal sessions for the day, and we're going to move on to the gala night event at 7:30 this evening, right? So all of you here are invited to join. I mean, you know how to get to the link. Okay, please come and join us, because today we are going to celebrate our community heroes. Community innovation with our community heroes and community scholars is really what you're going to experience today. And well, we really look forward to your presence. I think there will be chat and all going on. So I can't really imagine how a gala night in a virtual mode is going to look like, but roughly we are seeing some pictures, but we try to make it as humane as possible. We try to make it as down to earth as possible. We have music, we have attraction activities that are entertaining, but you have to bring your own food, right? With that, thank you very much, and see you soon at the gala. Okay, the link is in your chat.